friends. Today I want to talk about probably the most important subject when it comes to learning an instrument, which is practicing and really how to practice. Now, we've talked before on this channel about the concept of deliberate practice, and that's still very important. We need to identify all of the problems and how we're going to solve them in music. But then when it comes to how to actually put that into our practice regime, we can use a concept known as interleaved practicing. What I'm going to do is break down what that is in this video, and then a little bit of Ernest Kai's Loke Lani, which is a traditional Hawaiian song, and we're going to discuss some of the techniques in that and how I would go about teaching that to one of my students and what the practice regime would be. So first up is, what is this interleaved practicing? This is also known as random practice. If you think about it, in this world, generally how we're taught to practice new skills is through repetition. And that is very important. Repetition is very, very important. Just doing things over and over so our body and mind get used to that new feeling. But what we usually do is what's called blocked practicing, which is, we'll take one exercise and we'll do it 10 times or 20 times until it's absolutely perfect before we ever move on to something else. Now, the issue with doing this is that studies have shown when we do blocked practicing that what we really end up doing is not solving the problem over and over again, but really just giving ourselves the solution over and over again. If you think about just a simple math equation, say 2 plus 2 minus 2, right? When I say that to you right now, you're doing that simple math in your head and coming to the answer of 2. But if I say that again to you, 2 plus 2 minus 2, you already know the answer. You're just instinctively going to say 2. So it's not forcing your brain to solve any problems. And the thing is, we retain knowledge much better when we are continuously solving these problems and connecting the neurons in our brain that are telling our fingers what to do. And we can do the same thing in music. So what we're going to do, instead of simply just identifying a problem and practicing it 50 times until it's perfect, we're going to practice it a set amount of time or a set number of times. It doesn't really matter. We're not going to worry about perfection each time that we do it. We're going to worry about putting the reps in. This is much like with weightlifting. You don't always go till failure. You do sets of specific reps. And that's exactly what we're going to do, because much like our muscles, we need to give our brain a little bit of time just to reset and refresh before we address the problems anew. And you might find that using this approach of interleaved practicing, or practicing really numerous things at once in just little bite-sized portions, you don't feel as if you are making the progress as fast as you would with blocked scheduling. Because at the end of the day, if you play 50 times something exactly the same in a row, at the end of that day, it's going to feel great. But when you come back tomorrow, it's not going to be perfect, right? And the key is we want to have long-term gains, not short-term gains, which is really what blocked practicing gives us. When we've interleaved practicing, we practice numerous little bits at once. Our brain is forced to continue solving these equations each and every time that we do it, resetting at each new set that we do before we move on to the next set, and forcing ourselves to solve that problem again. And that is the key, is to continually be solving problems on the instrument, not just playing and not just giving ourselves the solution to the problem. So let's look at this Ernest Kai piece and see if we can just get through the first 8 bars. I'm going to break it down. So the first thing that we need to do is decide what we're going to practice. So there's really just 3 different things that I want to touch on in this. The first 8 bars of the tune I played at the beginning and sound like this. So we have a lot going on. So the first thing that we want to address is just the melody and the harmony, the notes that we are playing with our left hand. So we will practice this by just playing them and holding them out. We're going to do a little exercise that sounds something like this. For most, unless we have a moving line on the A string, we're just going to sustain the notes so we can really hear how the harmony and melody interact together. So this exercise will sound like this. And then we'll repeat back to the beginning. And we can do this exercise 5 times or so. It won't be perfect, but we'll start to get the left hand moving around. You'll start to feel comfortable, and then we're gonna stop doing it. So let's try this once together, and then you can pause the video and do the other repetitions of this. 1, 2, 3. 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Good, now you can pause here and do a few more repetitions on that to really get used to it. You want to have it under your fingers at least a little bit first before you really start drilling this. And after this, what is used in this, the right hand technique, is Kai's all the fingers stroke. And I'm really going to break this into 2 different portions for you to practice. So we're practicing 2 different rhythms, and they're going to be outside the context of what we just did. We're not going to throw in all that left hand motion. We're going to use very basic chords, just C and G7. The first stroke of Kai's all the finger stroke is an up strum, but we're actually going to place our fingers like this, and we are going to strum up with our thumbnail followed by the first finger, giving us a nice chorus effect. So you can hear it almost sounds like we have a dual chorused string or something like a mandolin as we play this. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to do down, up, down, and that will be our rhythmic pattern that we'll play these chords over. So this exercise will sound a little bit something like this. Let's try that little exercise together. So just remember to keep your fingers spread apart a little bit to get that little chorused sound. And then everything else is just down, up, down with your index finger with a regular strum. 1, 2, 3. Now to G7. Now you can pause here and practice that little exercise a few times. Now the last section of the all the fingers stroke, the all the fingers part, is we're actually going to come down after this first up stroke immediately with our ring finger, our middle finger, and our first finger. So the whole stroke together sounds like this. And the whole rhythm would be. But likely you're not used to coming through with these 3 fingers. So what I want you to do is just try a basic 3-4 pattern or 3 strokes, and we're going to come down on the same exact chords we just used, just C and G 7th. We're going to come down with our ring finger, middle finger, first finger. That's it. That's our 3 beats. So it'll be. You might find this a little bit awkward at first if you're not used to doing Rosciato rolls or anything like that. And it takes time and it takes strength to build these up. But this is a great little exercise to get that stroke going before we throw it very quickly into the pattern. We want to have the finger movement already accomplished. So let's try that together. 1, 2, 3. And G7. Back to C. So you can take these 3 exercises and do them, say, 5 times a piece, front to back, and then come back to the beginning and do each one 5 more times. And they're not going to be perfect each time they do that. We're not worried about perfection. We're worried about doing the repetitions and then resetting our brain and coming back and resolving that problem. And as we continue over the course of days to resolve these problems, you'll see that all of these motions that our fingers are doing and the harmony that we're listening to is much greater internalized than if you just drilled every measure of this 50 times and tried to get it perfect. If you enjoyed this lesson, please do hop over to my Patreon. We have the tabs for this tune as well as all the exercises we just talked about over there with weekly lessons and all that jazz. And as always, if you have any questions or comments or concerns about this lesson or anything to correct, please do drop it in the comments below or shoot me an email or message, and I'm always happy to help. I'll see you all next week.